Plato wrote down so many of Socrates' most famous works after he died. Similarly, Sun Bin did so for Sun Wu. Generally, it is believed that General Sun Wu's strategies were proven on the battlefield later, written down by his family member Sun Bin. The text was diligently used in the final centuries of the Zhou dynasty, a time marked by changes in bureaucratic upheaval, warfare, military reform, and the like. And its author's name, Sun Tzu, came about by mixing Sun Bin and Sun Wu's names. This power philosophical military guide is still used today, and its use occurs in so many different fields that it's quite astounding. One of the most unlikely places it pops up is in psychology, a field I am not as familiar with as my amazing daughter, Deanna Leary, yet still have delved deeply into when curiosity took hold of me instead of the cat. When I was in college, I used to access the resources I had as a student to study everything that I could get my hands on. This increased as more painful memories arose. I am talking about the experiences I had during different stages of my life. Those experiences that left me especially emotionally tender. When I was no longer in school, I moved towards using Google Scholar, a resource that Google has offered to provide free access to peer-reviewed articles. This avenue offered me the means to continue combing through sources to understand why I felt the way that I felt, and most especially how to stop such unhealthy thoughts and behaviors. This is how I learned about behavior modification. For me, it began to feel as if it was a war within to stop the war within. But as one of my all-time favorite philosophers, Sun Tzu, wrote, one may know how to conquer without being able to do so. You see, doctors are not medical experts. They practice medicine. They don't expert medicine. So I, like many patients out there, essentially felt like a lab monkey. A pincushion, if you will, but with antidepressants rather than pins. I was so absolutely sure that I could do a better job. While I could not make sure I was on all of the right medications, as I did not have the authority to use a prescription pad, I was sure that with all of the research I had done, I didn't need to keep taking different pharmacological bits prescribed to me when each and every one seemed worse than the last. Instead of further pin jabs to my pincushion self, I decided to use St. John's wort to battle depression. However, I had yet to hear about someone who was under the care of a medical professional who would approve such a medication without ensuring that a patient did not end up experiencing something like serotonin syndrome. It was simply too easy to end up taking too much of the medication with adverse effects, especially if you did not go to school for a decade or so to learn how to practice that medicine. But there were massive points in my life where I found myself feeling so strong because I took control of what medication went into my body and when it went into my body, because I no longer allowed myself to be a pincushion. Where experts just kept trying other medications with me, placing me directly in bed, curled up in the fetal position, crying, I believed that I'd taken control because changing my behavior altered my outlook. And that change helped me not feel so sad all the time. And so I'm brave and I move across the country, just myself and my daughter, to begin a new life, forging towards something that always seemed just out of reach. That consistent joy and happiness I so longed for. But you cannot outrun pain and depression. And as Sun Tzu said, in the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. And there was, because this move afforded me the opportunity for a level of healthcare that I'd never before received. It gave me a new doctor who listens and has helped me get to someone to talk to. I was able to take a test that determined the compatibility my body would have with mental health medications, so I could stop being that pincushion. I have the ability to focus more directly on my mental health. I've just begun this process, so do not hear these words as if they are the end all be all. For we are always on a journey, we are always on a path. But I thought today I'd share some of that journey with you, my beautiful Mosaic and brothers and sisters, through Sun Tzu colored glasses. I speak often of the importance of taking care of yourself in detail to anybody and everybody around me, but rarely do so for myself. This military general, strategist, philosopher, and writer wrote the following words that seem to repeat in my head. Treat your men as you would your own beloved sons, and they will follow you into the deepest valley. Naturally, it is the thought behind the quote that persisted. I do not treat myself as belovedly as I treat everyone around me. And so why in the world would I even think of following myself into the deepest valley to battle demons? Emotional demons. I have repeatedly said throughout my whole life that a counselor is just a guide and as we're going down the road ourselves, sometimes we need a guide through the darkest part of the forest. That awesome philosopher also wrote, supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. So I'm supposed to go into the darkest part of the forest and be guided there to face an enemy, but not fight him? But the supposed enemy is within. And that is probably the moment that I realized, sitting on a new counselor's couch, that I was never supposed to fight those demons. I was supposed to open a dialogue with them. I was supposed to surrender to it the same way that I surrender to nature, that I surrender to God, that I surrender to the beauty and the power of the stars, the same way I gently fall into the words of a poem. I'm supposed to surrender. I can't fight the enemy because the enemy is myself. The enemy is the small child who went through all of the pain in the first place. Fighting will just cause more pain, but surrendering? Is that the answer? Well, I don't know how this ancient Chinese philosopher and military strategist knew about my triggers, but the phrase, the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting, says it all. The darkness and the sadness and the pain and the horrible things that can happen in life are not the enemy. I'm not the enemy. You are not the enemy. There is no enemy. There is a pain with experience and a desire to flee from it, the desire to fight it, the desire to fill the void with screams and pleasure and anything to avoid the pain. And so we name it an enemy. And behavior modification is not a bad thing at all. As that awesome dude said, there is no instant of a nation befitting from prolonged warfare. So until I realized that it is not a battle and that there was no enemy and any prolonged warfare would be against myself, I don't think I could really get started. Because even if reactions that cause pain go outwards towards others, we are still hurting ourselves. And if we tuck it inside, the pain, it will envelop us and make us sort of swipe outwards anyway. And I say what I say about behavior modification because of another brilliant phrase that man said. When you surround an army, leave an outlet free. Do not press a desperate foe too hard. Until you can realize that there is no enemy and that the darkness simply is, you need behavior modification to give you that free outlet when it gets too difficult. Because he believed that there are 5 essential victories, and they all seem to feel exactly like what I'm going through. I'll share. He will win who knows when to fight and when not to fight. Well, I know when to fight and when not to fight. Sometimes you just surrender. For me, it would be those moments in traffic, or the second one is rather. The second one is he will win who knows how to handle both superior and inferior forces. Those moments in traffic when you're angry and when you want to yell or you want to curse because somebody is so rude or traffic won't move fast enough, those are inferior moments. Those are inferior forces. It's the little ones that you let go of. And it's the big ones that you go with that guide, that counselor sitting on the couch through that forest and open the dialogue with the demons. Striking out verbally in anger means very little, like I said. um, but surrendering to that place where anger and joy meet deep within, that's a superior force. It feels like you should run from it, but it's not something you should run from. I can be from out of that valley of darkness where anger lies, that true light can be found. And his third reason, or his third maxim, he will win whose army is animated by the same spirit throughout its ranks. If you surrender and walk the path through your darkest times, then a heaven, a healing, formerly unbeknownst to you, can enter the soul, invigorating it to the very essence of your being. And now, number 4, he will win who, prepared himself, waits to take the enemy unprepared. I do not know that the enemy is unprepared, as it is always with me. It is a bit like asking if you are prepared to breathe, even if you are holding your breath. That's not a question you ask. However, that behavior mod is so entrenched in who I am that I suspect if there were an enemy, they would be quite unprepared. 5 and 6 are seamless. He will win who has military capacity and is not interfered with by the sovereign. I am the sovereign force in my own life, and I shall continue the path through the darkest time to gain a balance through healing longed for. And she who wishes to fight must first name the costs, count the costs, think deeply about the costs. This reminds me that the true fight is the struggle to surrender, because doing so forces him to reveal himself so as not to find out his vulnerable spots. Behavior modification filled up those vulnerable spots. And it is not that it did not help, it's just part of the story, the lines of which have guided me to where I am right now. I have spoken before about traversing the evil without even stepping to the edge of the murkiest part of the forest. And so, on this precipice, I say onward and upward, because each step through the wilderness is a victory, and each step backwards is not a great deal of yardage, but just a part of the journey. I have lost my good insurance. I struggle to make ends meet, but I sit here before you and I say that these are just rocks upon the road, and even a boulder won't stop me. To sum up, I will tell you what I told that counselor. Each house is built upon a foundation. If that foundation is not laid properly, or if it has cracks, dents, crevices, those cracks can massively grow. We're talking they become fissures. Each traumatic event one experiences is a fracture, a crack in that foundation. And if those breaks are not properly attended to, then the house can crumble. The behavior modification, without the help of therapy, did a great job. Did a good job, at least, of doing that landlord special. A term used online to describe fixing something in a house just enough for the tenants or possible renters to be able to tolerate it for a little while longer. I do not want to do the landlord special on my foundation. A coat of paint and creativity is just not enough. I want to fix it at the root. I want to repair those foundational fractures. I will do so, and no boulder, as I said, shall stand in my way. May we all bathe in sunlight, but never hide from the darkness, and even dialogue with it as we grow. Blessed be and amen.